I was born and reared, as they say, in Waterford. My father worked in the ESB, and we lived in Graysdew. And my father hailed from Kilmacow, and my mother hails from Rapatrick, which is just a mile or so over the way. And her parents, or her mother, hailed from where I'm living now in Ballinlaw. And we came to live in Ballinlaw in 1980. Now, prior to that, albeit I was reared in town and went to school in town, much of my summer holidays, say, and weekends were spent at my grandparents' place in Rapatrick. And there was always then an association, a sort of a grow for the place and for the environs, the culture, if you like. Even though it wasn't, it wouldn't be what you'd be calling it at the time, but there was it was always particularly attractive to me.
And your your wife's grandmother, or your wife's grandmother, no, your
my grandmother.
Yes, your grandmother. What was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the place called Slieverue in Ballinlaw. And her father came. Her mother's maiden name was Whelan, and the Ryan was Tom Ryan, who came from a place called Ballygub, which is down in the Stag direction. And he married Ellen Whelan, and they were my great grandparents.
And were they like down in Ballinlaw? Were they fishing people?
They would have fished. Most people around there fished. Even people that were farming did a bit of fishing as well. That they were next to the river, and access was no bother. Egress could have been a different matter.
And can you remember like the fishing going on out there?
Not of my people, but I can remember that I knew of people who were still involved in fishing in the earlier time.
Because I mean, we hear stories about how prominent it was and how much fish was coming out of the river at that time. And it seems to be quite a thriving little industry.
It was. It still is. That there are still a number of people who fish. Maybe a bit of moonlight, but that helps too. But there was every cottage and every small farm around the place. Well, it's mostly small farms are in it, but there could be a farm with a couple of brothers in it, and one of them, maybe two of them, would be fishermen, and would at times of pressure on farming would be available, say putting in hay or corn or whatever.
And your granny, what can you tell us a few stories about her?
My granny, she was Molly, and she was one of the old style. She snuffed, and I was only a kid, and we were at mass. I used to go to mass with Granny, because Grandad would be gone before us, and maybe be in next door before he'd go to mass, and he would go down through the fields, and he would be in the village in a flash, and we'd be going over the road with our nice polished shoes. But she and the others of her generation would be in the same pew inside in mass, and the Sunday morning, like the snuff would be going, and somebody would have bought a new brand or been given a, and I was facilitating this thing anyway, and try some of that Eiley, and I was to hand it over to Eiley intact, but I did the gentlemanly thing at this height, and I opened it, and it went all over the place, and I had a flea in my ear for about a month afterwards.
Did you get killed?
Well, I'd say it was the only time I got a box in the church. But
Can you remember the other old ladies that were there at the time?
vaguely enough, I would only meet them at Mass. And if my mother was around, obviously I would be with my mother at Mass. And wouldn't have come across them, but my tenure in that pew sort of was iffy after that.
And would your granny, would she do much storytelling? Would she ever tell you stories of lands or anything?
Not really. No, her concerns around us would be, I suppose, for our safety. There was animals and the living was all around the place. There was machinery, and she would. Twould be more around looking after cows and very practical kind of stuff. That certain amount of the family stuff, but not a lot really. That her time, she died in 1983, so I was only a gosser at the time. So when I spent a good bit of time there, I was very young. I was say 6, 7, 8, up to about 12. So it's history or family history or stuff like that, where it might have been discussed, it might have been, as they say, available to me, but it didn't quite stick.
Mm. And then you were having association with the milepost.
Yeah, in my later years, I suppose late 60s, early 70s, it was through one or two lads that I knew at work who hailed from this side and from Ferrybank, and they used to, relate yarns about where they would have been for the weekend and start off in Margaret's and or end up in Margaret's or whatever the case may be. So I had known my grandfather and I'm sure many more. My uncle would have been customers at Margaret's, and when it was run by Margaret's parents, and James Power, and the place was known as Jimmy Ned's, but it wasn't a reference that she relished, that her father's name was James Power. So she was a very sedate lady, and any sort of loose kind of reference like that just wasn't tolerable, wasn't acceptable. But started to go with it. I liked generally the layout of the place. It was old. There was nothing fancy at all about it. There was no draft beer. Bottles or half-ons or Jaffa, and the lack of draft puts a story in mind of much much later years, there was a couple of Yanks arrived in one night, and one of them a real fidgety, sort of rigid, and the other fellow was sort of happy enough. He said, "I saw they were in the pub," and this fellow was doing a scan of the shelves anyways. What was he going to drink, and make sure he wasn't going to poison himself or whatever. So he nudged the other fellow. He says, "Has he got any draft?" And he wants to know if you have any draft. I said, "Yeah, I have." I said, "It's just coming in under the door." So it took about 5 minutes for him to cop on to what we were talking about. The other fellow, in the meantime, was following around the place laughing. What's so funny? Yeah, draft. But I liked the place. I liked, there was an awful lot of people going in it. As I got to know them, they were friends or associates of people that were related to myself, and they would know my people. And there was a sort of, what would you say, it made the initial part of it was made easier because there was an awful lot of people who were going in it whom I knew otherwise. But as I say, basically the place appealed to me. It was very different.
Yeah. And it was a famous place for sing-songs.
It was. There was at one stage I was out of work with an injury, and I would go for an aperitif before my midday meal, and there was one or two more similarly stricken, and by about 1 o'clock there was a right session going, and there was strings and boxes and the whole lot. So there was a man who lived just down the way here. Again, he would be a regular in for a drink before his dinner, and he would come in and he'd get his bottle and his half on and go down and sit down in the middle of the shop. And the place was the bar area was always referred to by herself as the shop. But sit down, and the comment he made on one particular occasion is, "By God," he says, "that's nice. Of the tunes and whatever." So it was, and there was the impromptu, and then there was the sort of semi-organised that you would be, well, it would be around such and so is coming out on such a night, and oh yeah, I must let such and so know, and such and somebody else, and the place would be awash with talent. And lots of people brought a tin whistle or a box or whatever, and it would go on further on in the night, and there would be an MC, self-appointed generally, but it was a more orderly session. With if somebody said, "Okay, Pat, you sing a song," or so and so or so and so.
The royal call.
So yeah, exactly, yeah. So that was it, and that as I say, it could as easily happen impromptu if there was a crowd gathered in it, and it might just so happen that somebody had a gadget out in the car, and will I bring it in? What? Hey, my man has a box out in the car. Bring it in. And once there wasn't too much yahooing or jumping around, it was very tolerable.
And so she obviously liked music as well.
Oh, she did, yeah. I suppose it was another dimension to the social discourse in the place, like that. And it's, I suppose, after a certain amount of time, the place had a reputation for maybe tolerance of people's idea of their own talent, but it was it was tolerated, and she was kindly disposed to protect strangers. She would, I would be behind the bar quite a lot at the time. Do you know? No, Margaret. Don't know him at all. But she would do a tour then of the other sort of elders, if you like, and do you know this man? And she'd eventually find out chapter and verse, and she'd be back out. They're from County Wexford. He's an engineer, and she is a school teacher, and they're staying over at John Malone's, and they'll be here for a week. But that was, I suppose, anybody would want to know who's coming into the premises, but she would even make her way over and make them feel welcome, and
she had to know first.
Oh, she did, yeah.
But would she knew she
But
was
last resort, like she would make some excuse to strike up a conversation, and as I say, they would be made to feel welcome, and you would know who they were, why they were there, why they were around.
What kind of woman was she?
She was a very proper, a person who was very, very fair-minded, not not the type to sort of suggest politics or religion, or there were subjects that were, I'd say she was more happy to avoid, more especially in the shop. But she said to me once that when her references to her parents always, it was never my father or my mother, Daddy or Mammy. And she said, when Daddy died, and it fell to me to take over the business, and I had to go down to the court, and she said it in such a way like, no, that this was an awful thing, to have to go to the court. And she took it down to the court anyway, and processed the changeover of the licence. And she said, I was sitting there, and probably not much going on, waiting for somebody to do something or say something. And she says, I made myself a promise then, she says, that anybody who would give me any bother while I was running the business would only do it once. So,
Well, what?
would only do it once.
Okay. So she ran a strict house.
She ran a strict house, and I think that came after she had to show somebody the door, and I made a sort of reference to it after the doors were closed and we were tidying up and what have you, and it's not one of the pleasant aspects of this business, but it's something that must be done. And up and relating the story about the court transfer and what have you. So that, and it sort of branched out into her treatment, if you like, of there was even the more prominent people going in it, that if they were noticeably inebriated, they were told quite politely, you have enough. And that, if it went to being told, that was it. You have enough now. You'd be better off leaving it. And you could argue if you like, but you only got yourself into more bother. But next day, or the next visit, welcome was the flowers in May.
And she never got married herself, did she?
No, she didn't. She nor her brother never married. Her brother was he was an avid producer of light opera and even at one stage grand opera, and he was in Maynooth studying for the priesthood, and decided the priesthood at the late in the training he decided the priesthood wasn't for him, and he was principal in St. Peter's College in Wexford, and he trained the Wexford hurling team on stage years and years ago. But again,
What was his name?
Eddie Power. He would have been known down and around as Ned Power. And no, the reference at home was Eddie, and there was like often people who wouldn't realise the situation would come in, and she might know them well or might know them vaguely, and if they were from down around County Wexford, well, they would have a certain sort of they would win where others would lose. That County Wexford people seem to appeal to her, but people would come and ask, and how's Ned getting on? Now, obviously, she knew whom they were referring to, but she'll answer and wouldn't ever sort of, might say it later to myself, we never referred to Eddie as anything other than Eddie. And she had another sister who I think Margaret might have been the eldest, and the Eddie, I think, was next, and the younger sister married, and she was living down in New Ross. Now she had no family, but there were only the three of them in it.
And tell me, when she did die, was there a great loss in the community then?
There was. It was, the house was unique, and the conduct and the whole lot. It was, I suppose, maybe it was a bit timid for many, but there's an awful lot of people who wouldn't face into it because they'd have to keep it down and keep it quiet, and any introduction of foreign language was cut out fairly swiftly, and it didn't matter who it was. So it just wasn't tolerated, and that was it. But when, oddly enough, I heard of Margaret's death, I was in Lourdes, and I knew that she was poorly, but again, she had been and rallied and so on. But it was an undertaker who told me, who happened to be in the group with whom I was in Lourdes. So your friend has gone to God. And didn't quite rest for the moment, but yeah, Margaret passed away while I was away. So it closed very shortly afterwards, and it was never revived. Nobody, the people who bought it didn't buy it as a pub. I think the license was disposed of in the meantime. So it's now a private house.
You weren't tempted yourself?
No, no. It's there's only one thing more demanding, I think, than a pub, and that's a farm, or if you're milking cows. And it was fine to go and to do, you know, if the more especially if there was an occasion, if say a retirement party, I might get be asked privately, will you be around on the 17th of yeah, probably, yeah. We're having a bit of a send off for Mick or Joe or Tom or whoever it is. Would you be able to look after the... Ah, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah. And more often than not, I would be there anyway. But it obviously was very much appreciated that Gwen and just make sure there was enough of everything there she would spend more time out around the place. Now she would be gathering up bottles and glasses and what have you, but again she would relish the opportunity to meet people and find out who they really were. And name is only a name, but he's Kelly and he's from, and is he anything to you, or have you any? And or it's that was the type of woman she was. She was
very inquisitive,
not overly, I would say, but there was a curious somebody came into the place who hadn't been there before, and it wasn't out of any fear that they were sort of daddies or whatever, but wondered where they were from. Maybe an accent would betray a southwestern or whatever, but curiosity, and it was she didn't, as they say, poke her nose into anybody else's business or ask about, she wouldn't ask me what are they at, or sort of be overly inquisitive about somebody else's affairs. But sure, there was that, but there was also if somebody would arrive in and might have a clue, they might have a slight English accent, obviously home from England on holidays, and if she wasn't in the bar when they arrived, they came out and you could see her face lighting up. Oh, hello, Ollie, how are you? And it's a while since you were here, or something or other like this, and she would generally agree the duration. I wasn't around now, Margaret, since it was 22 or 3 years ago. I was thinking about that. She says, and mentioned some occasion around that time. That's right. But she had an uncanny memory for faces. People who came in there casually with me, and might not have been in the place again, not for years and years, but they turn up just to go in and say hello and have a drink and where Pat goes, and oh, hello, Paul, how are you? And people's faces just dropped at the spontaneity that she could, and might be only a couple of years, but it could be a good couple of years as well.
And so was she interested in history then?
She would, but it was never obvious that she would No, there wouldn't have been a sort of any overt sort of reference to history. Maybe occasional reference to her own family or whatever, but or even to mine. Like they would have been neighbours, if you like. They were after there was a small farm attached to the house, and my mother's people are farming just across the way. So similarly, my granddad would have gone down there, and there was one of the locals says to me, God, he says, you set your watch by Pat Maher coming in here. He was Pat Maher, but he went there for a drink in the evenings, and as he did here as well.
And how long would it take you to get from your place to my place?
From where I am now?
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose 10 minutes.
By car?
By car, yeah.
Well, in the old days, where people would say when they were walking and stuff like that,
An awful lot of journeys were shortened through the fields.
okay. They knew that.
Yeah, my grandfather coming to mass or to pub here in this wasn't the village, it was the street. And if he was coming over to the street for a drink, he came out the laneway of the home place, straight across the road and down through the fields. And 2 fields later, he was at about 100 yards up the road there. I hadn't seen a road at all. That and similarly, I can remember people, even we could call it more modern times, the Rue Glen when it opened, I think late 60s, and there was people who would come from down beyond where I am, and they would go across the fields and up across the railway into in onto the site more or less, and they would have crossed one road.
And can you just tell me about Margaret? Any other peculiarities about her that people would remember? What was she like at closing time?
Oh, closing time could be a racket. Like if like anywhere when people have had to drink. As my mother used to say, when the wine is in, the wit comes out. And they're more talkative, obviously, and they're much more informed for staying there and chatting, and maybe with people whom they hadn't met up with for a while before. And if it was getting 10 minutes after, the clock was always 10 minutes fast, or it was 12 minutes fast. And there was no response to we have to finish up now. It's just time to go, and then there would be a miniature mineral bottle, and it would be rattled off the counter, and that would shift most. Felt like going home myself at times. But
and Claire, did you ever go into the other pub down Banlawn?
I did, yeah. I did. I went in it down to Aggie, and her husband, Jim, he was a carpenter. He was from County Wexford, and it was a 6-day licence, and there was no spirits. Now there would be spirits for special occasions, and there wouldn't be ghosts, but there was several organised sessions of drink and music and tunes and what have you, and I came out from town, talking about in the early 70s, say, and the first one I went to, I was in kind of a panic because it was late in the night. I thought it was 11 o'clock. I said, I'll have one, or maybe get the second one and drink it sitting up on the wall or whatever. That sort of thing was only getting going when I was coming out of it at 1:30. So it was again, it was just down a cul-de-sac, and if the enemy was coming down the hill, you swam for it. But we were, myself and a couple of lads that I work with, we were at a funeral in Ferrybank one morning, and there was 5 of us, I think, and we were at the funeral and the 11 o'clock mass, and we get a drink before we go back. Yeah, sure. And one of the lads was there, and he was talking about where his grandfather used to come in off the river and go for a drink and what have you. And I said, it could be either 2 places now. I said, it could be down to Jack Mead's, because I know that my grandfather and some more of his mates might have took off on a boat and gone around and up to go in there and have a few and come back home. And no, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't there. He said it was to somewhere in Slieverue, and he described the. I said, I think I know where you're talking about. I said, come on, we'll go down. So there's 5 or 6 packed into my car anyway. I went down. I said, does this now? I said, look like, because there was no sign of any signs for Guinness or anything at all, but it was a private house to all intents and purposes with the counter. And he says, that's sort of, that's there, and so on. Yeah, so I went in anyway, and my elder brother got to go to him, was Billy. And if the 4 of us arrived in, my 3 brothers and myself, she probably would say hello Billy 4 times, that any of the rest didn't matter. So didn't anyway, and I said, morning Aggie, how are you? Billy, she said, Billy, I have no drink, she says. There was a whole gang of them here yesterday that they drank every drop was in the place. So the tag on that visit then was, the morning your man brought us down to the pub with no beer. So that was Aggie and a whisk, and she sweeping out whatever the hens left after him inside the shop. But
your grandfather didn't drink it?
He possibly would have, but it would have been sort of a bit out of the way to go back down there. This would have been much more convenient for him, or the Mile Post. There wouldn't be a big difference involved. But I suppose on home he wanted to meet or that.
And come here, did you play an instrument yourself?
I didn't know. No. I made a poor attempt at singing, and I as a youngster I did play the mouth organ, and I didn't stick with it.
What was
and
your songs?
There were a few, but the Carrickfergus was one that was asked, if somebody has to sing, I'll go up and sing Carrickfergus. And as I said, there was 1 or 2 more that I might sort of. Huh?
Have a go at.
I would. I'd have a go at. It's generally the as they say, the order was pretty good. It was demanded by whomever would ask, sort of appoint themselves the MC, or if you might be sort of you might get a whisper before the thing will start. If we get a few songs going, will you? I will, yeah. And that you're a little bit forearmed, haven't been forewarned.
And can you tell us some of the characters that you associate with the pub?
There's various men I referred to earlier on. He was farming just down the way here, and he was one of these very, very regular people who went in there about 12:30, 20 to 1 every day, had a bottle and a half and then off home for the spuds. And, very good conversationalist, knowledgeable about lots and lots of stuff. And you'd be well entertained engaging in a conversation with him. And
What was he, sir?
Dick Ryan, just down the way. And there was another then. He was character, sort of. I don't know how kindly to describe him, but he worked on the railway, and I think the main job he had was making tea. And he would spin you a yarn as quick as he'd look at you. And, when you get the opportunity to stand back, if you weren't the subject or the recipient of what was going on, you could stand back, and this rigmarole would start, and somebody would cop on to the fact that, this is a load of, and draw it out. And probably, now I'm going to tell you something, Morris, and something about 4 times worse, or maybe more, horrendous, and God knows how many were killed. But is that right? And one of them cutting the other. But there was.
Who was that down on the railway?
Is this thing going to become known? Yeah, but there was, we'll call him Mick Phelan, but this same character, it was history now and me don't match up too well, but the RIC were the people to be avoided if you were going drinking, and they would raid pubs after hours or whatever the hours were, and they were banging down the door down below at Margaret's one night, into being her father's tenure, but they quickly, whatever half dozen or more of them were there, don't give your own name. Just think of something or other now, and we'll go out the back door, and if you're caught, just tell them you're someone else. So it was a bad night, and Mick was running up the field anyway, behind the pub, with head down, holding the hat, and the next thing anyway, he banged into something or someone. Make feelings, sir. He was after running into a big ass that was in the middle of the field. So, don't give your own name. Yeah.
That's the motto.
Yeah. So there was another man who used to come in, and long since dead, but a very big man, and worked in Clover Meats, as many did at the time, who frequented Margaret's, and Dick would come in and he would have a thirst, and bottle and a drop hat. So I'd get the bottle and a pint glass and pour some, just to make sure the bottle was okay, and get the drop and put a bit of wine into it, which was his fancy. Get the money, say a tenner or whatever it is, you see, and go get the change, and tap the glass on the counter, go again, another half one, and by the time you'd have that doctored and handed to him, go back to the till to get him his change, and you want another bottle. And the tenner was nearly spent. Now, you'd probably get about 6 bottles for a tenner at the time. And the tenner was damn near spent before you got the chance to give him his change. That he had a shore. But there was one or two who could, who might arrive in with him or be there when he's there, and what you haven't, and they'd swap drinks around, and it would go just as quickly. But there was one who didn't realise what he was at, and insisted on buying a drink for this man and joining him, and Dick went off about his business in 10-15 minutes, having had about 6 or 7 drinks, and the lad who went to share with them was there disfigured for the next couple of hours. He just took in a whole load of alcohol too quickly, and he was totally out of his depth. But man went out and got up on his motorbike and off he goes. But it wasn't poor for characters at all. That different other people arrive in there, and it nearly went without saying that they had a box in the car, or if they didn't bring it in with them when they arrived, and there would be a few tunes, and it might give rise to if the people that were there were inclined to sing, you could have a session going in no time.
Could you be tempted to sing a song?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would be very nervous about the surroundings need to be right for me to sing. So
where do you go now?
I don't go to pubs very much at all, and haven't done since Market's closed. And that's, I think it's, yeah. I had, if you like, to use the expression or the term that had become institutionalised, in that going to the pub for me was going to markets, and going to markets meant that I went around in behind the bar, and I had my few drinks, and I accommodated whoever else was there, and it just became a way of life. That it was more unusual to see me outside of the bar than in, and for a while we went here and there to the Rutland or either of these two houses here, and maybe in town, but at that stage then the drink driving thing was becoming much more of an issue, and you had to be much more careful about where you could go. And for that reason, I could reach the milepost at the time, going by roads. I wouldn't have to go on the main road at all. And that changed, obviously, and that there was the same ease wasn't there about going and having a drink. So I sort of more or less just phased out, and it would be occasions now. Get a bit long on the tooth for it anyway.
What's the blue moon?
Yeah, well, once, as I said, there would be some sort of a session or an occasion, and you know, simply made sure that you had transport home, and that there would be occasional work outings, and same thing. That
Where did you work at?
I worked in Waterford Glass for 40 odd years, and sure,
What section?
in the administration. I was in the wages. So shortly after finishing there, I had the option of retiring at 60, and I think I was 60, something like 61 before, when I left. 40 years complete and be over 60, and there was an offer to go on full pension. So I availed a bit. So I was only out with a cracking time, and somebody rang me and would you drive a minibus a couple of hours a day for a couple of days a week? And I said I'd give it a shot. Now I hadn't any plan about where I was going, what I was doing, what how many days were going to be spent, and I gave it a shot, and I'm still giving it a shot. So that's
What did you drive
for a CC House Day Centre. It's in Dominic Place inside town. So I go in there and collect people, bring them to the centre, and just leave and come back at 4 o'clock to bring them home. So I do that Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday.
And when you started at Glass, where were you? Was that out in Cork Road?
No, I started in Johnstown,
Johnston.
and I think that was in 1962.
And
And
did you go straight into the office?
yeah, in I worked in several areas. I did a stint with quality control, and I also did a while trying to develop a machine to cut glass, and it didn't work out. It wasn't producing the kind of quality that was necessary, so it was sent back across the pond. But
You were there before it became very big then.
I was, yeah, but it was peculiar in that it became very big in a very small site, and it was there was pockets and little alleyways, and there was rooms and bigger rooms, and there was a couple of dozen fellas working here repairing glass or cutting, and there was several. It was God knows how many different other separate areas in it where you could have 10, 15 people working, but like there was a huge amount of people on the site. It was a sort of there was nooks and crannies and laneways and alleyways down through the place, and as I said, there was an awful lot of people on the site, and like they moved into Kilbarry, and people all of a sudden had plenty of room and plenty of fresh air, and I think the downside is they could be seen. But there's no place to hide all of a sudden. But it was so much better and so much healthier, even from that point of view. That a lot of the places were too small for what they were being used for, and cluttered, basically. And I suppose with the...
Was that your first job in Glass? Or had you worked for someone before?
No, I went into the glass when I was 18 and stayed there until I was
Had you gone from
60.
school then?
Straight from school, yeah.
What school did you
Mount Sign. Canucksheen.
go? What square you go up there that time?
Oh, Gamore Moore. Yes, by the time I was ready to go to Mount Sign, I had to be able to respond, and it in Irish without it sounding like a translation. That there was a few who were there, and like I mean the standard of Irish was really, really good, and it was demanded all the time that you'd be told, you should answer me in English if you're going to start fumbling and translating in front of me. So I did.
Did you do your leaving cert then?
I didn't do the leaving cert at all. That I left having completed a year short.
Yeah.
So this arose and I went for it.
But you didn't kind of look to work in the factory, you got a job in the office?
I went in there for summer holiday work, and there was a change coming about, and a chap that was a year ahead of me in Mount Sign said, would you be interested in doing this? And that was all there was to the interview. So I went and did it, and did various other jobs around the place, as I say, and ended up there was time and motion work study function there, and I went working with them, and ultimately that was taken over by the wages function itself. So that's how I ended up in the wages.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Pat. That was lovely.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's lovely to get the insight, because I've heard a lot about people mention the pub.
Yeah.
I never heard about what was like inside it.
It's there was different other curios, that there was pictures of the Lusitania, and like it's in the latter years they had become somewhat decrepit. The care or the attention was the interest wasn't there, and the occasions. Now, one of the occasions would have been the sing song to do with EIGSE, and that was a red letter day for us all, and organised this and make sure that everybody got what they wanted. And
that was the major celebration.
it was a major night. It became a regular thing.
The festival club.
Oh yeah, exactly, yeah. But I don't know whether that description would have fitted. Yeah. So you had to get it right. Description or whatever. There was no time for it. So anything that was even slightly demeaning the shop was seriously frowned on. So, well, small blame either, like. So, yeah.
Sounds like a lovely character.
Yeah. I don't know. I was always very, very fond of her, and like we had it was more a friendship between the pair of us than a customer thing. That felt I was very much part of
her adopted son.
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And even the fact that she probably fell into it because her father died.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't any big plan on her part.
Oh no. Margaret went to school in Ferrybank, and lots of like the nuns. I think the nuns in Frybank are the French order, or whatever, but French was. I think she obviously did French, and lots of stuff before ever I became interested in it would be explained that that she could expressions that might be used, or somebody made a mess, if you like, of like in your language or my language or whatever, and the word used is portents or something or other, and she's quite calmly to me after said what he was talking about is parlance. It's it's from the French. It says parler, speak, parlance, language, whatever, you know. If they go to use this kind of parlance, they should at least get it right. Yeah. So,
A bit of a lady then.
oh, very much, and the any dealings at all, whether it was serious or jocose, there was always the balance was maintained, and the parlance, the language used was adequate and no more. That if you were you have enough, go home.
So,
And like the fewer words, the less issue, and the sooner the matter was dealt with. So it was a learning process for a lot of years. Really was in sort of dealing with people and situations, and
well, you were lucky, I suppose, in a way to come across it.
yeah, I am very lucky in that it was always an interest. It was always something that where I never felt obliged. It was somewhere I liked to go, somewhere you know that if you like the company was selected in that you know anyone found to be undesirable weren't welcome, and there was no ifs nor buts about it. So she but there was never felt in any way obligated to be there. That if I announced we were going here or there, and sure, enjoy yourself, and you know that it would never be a question. Oh, what am I going to do? No, never mention. And if I was late going in it for whatever reason, no less welcome. And for that reason, and all of the previous, as they say, it was just so. It was an easy kind of an aspect of my life, and could go or stay or come away again. More often stay, obviously, but no, I enjoyed it from the get-go.
And like those people are few and far between now.
That was I suppose, what was so appealing to me about the place, is that if you looked around, the place next door to it was being run, still run by the people who owned it from way before I was even thought of. Same applied in Margaret's, the same applied in Stapleton's. It still does. That it is the daughter of Miss Stapleton, who is the proprietress now. This was Rockets, and it changed hands. Willie Lyons bought it, and there was the power connection and the ferry bank connection, and it was a relatively smooth transition. Now, it was a place that went from being an old style pub come shop to a bar and lounge and music venue and all that sort of stuff. That it and the Route Lane were similar in that way, in that there was bands and what have you, but the others didn't. Like it would be a session or that. Yeah. But as I say, the amount of pubs of that kind of vintage that were being run by the owner Tom Mars and Mundarrick would be another. I went in there for a couple of years as well. But again, sort of a similar curiosity about the customers, and pulled in at one evening anyway and had a bottle or two and went away about my business. I think the next hour, the third, was having a drink anyway, and he says, "Your father hurled between the sticks for us." For us, Moonkind. My father did play in goal for Moonkind, hurling. So he had done his sums, and yeah. But again, I don't know. I think it was the style of place that had an attraction for me. Another place I went when I was working in Johnstown was into Davy Max in the Manor, and it was a unique enough shop too, and he and Margaret would they're both powers, but I don't think there's any connection. But the demeanour was very similar. That Davy was plenty of chat for you and all the rest of it, but if you were half tanked, maybe you better go, Paddy. And have enough. But again, a bachelor, not a bother on him. But don't ask me. It's I think the fact that places like it were much more established and people were regular goers, and the pace was calm, and anybody sort of upsetting that calmness to any sort of serious extent, was told no, thanks, but no thanks. Probably weird.
Thanks very much.
My pleasure. That's great.